The man saw it.
Simple enough.
It feels simple, right? 4 words. Subject, verb, object. You say it, I get it, we move on. But for our deep dive today, we're going to completely ruin that simplicity for you.
Ruin it.
I think so. Because if you look at the source material we have, this work on categories and transformations and the mechanics of move, that sentence is a kind of a lie.
A lie is a strong word.
Okay, maybe a little. But it's not just a string of words, is it? It's like the surface of this massive, deep ocean underneath. The man saw it. There's a whole invisible engine just whirring away in our brains.
Right. And today we're popping the hood.
We are.
And I'm glad you used the word engine, because the sources we're looking at, they don't treat language like some, humanities subject. They treat it like a computational system.
Yeah.
Like a biological computer program.
And that's exactly why we're doing this. We want to understand the mission of this system. We're not just looking at grammar rules you memorized in middle school. We're looking at the physics of thought.
Exactly. And the why, the reason anyone listening should care about this stuff, is that the text argues human language is, well, it's optimal.
Optimal. That's a pretty bold claim, given how I sound before my first coffee.
It doesn't mean we speak perfectly. It means the system itself, the machine in your head, it doesn't do anything extra. It's ruthlessly efficient.
So it's lazy.
It's lazy, but in this brilliant mathematical way. Every movement, every single structure, it exists because it has to.
So when I say a sentence, I'm not just talking. I'm running this high-efficiency algorithm.
You are. And to really get it, we have to look at one specific operation. It's kind of the star of today's show. It's called move.
Okay, let's unpack move.
Yeah.
Because, in the real world, if I move a coffee cup from the table to the sink, cup is gone from the table. It's at the sink.
Yeah.
End of story.
Right.
But the text implies that in language, move is something, something stranger.
Much stranger. So let's look at the definition. The source defines move as taking a category, we can call it alpha, and raising it to a target. Let's call that K.
Alpha raises to K.
But the key is what gets left behind. When you move alpha, you create what's called a chain. The text labels it CH. And this chain is made up of the thing you moved and its trace.
A trace. Like a footprint or, I don't know, a ghost.
The source actually calls it a copy. And this is the famous copy theory of movement. And this is where your coffee cup analogy just completely breaks down. In syntax, when you move a word, you aren't really transporting it. You are, in effect, introducing that item a second time into the structure.
Wait a second. So if I ask, which book did you read? We know which book started at the end, right? Like, you read which book.
Correct. It starts as the object of the verb.
So you're telling me when I move it to the front to ask the question, I'm basically cloning it.
You are. The structure in your brain is actually, which book did you read, which book?
But I don't say it twice. I don't sound like a broken record saying, which book did you read, which book?
You don't pronounce it twice. That's the key. The text makes a huge distinction between the syntax, the logical structure, and the phonology, which is just the sound. The copy is there. Structurally, it has to be.
Why does it have to be? I mean, why not just cut and paste? Why copy and paste?
Well, think about the verb read. It needs an object, right? If you just cut which book out entirely, the verb would be left hanging. It'd have nothing to interact with. The trace, the copy, it holds that spot.
Okay, I can see the logic there, but it feels a little bit theoretical. I mean, do we have any hard proof that this ghost copy is actually sitting there in the sentence?
We do. We have really good proof, actually. The source brings up this fascinating example with ellipsis.
Ellipsis, like leaving stuff out.
Exactly. So take this sentence. John said that he was looking for a cat, and so did Bill.
And so did Bill. Okay, common enough. Bill also said he was looking for a cat.
Right, but think about what's happening. You only said, so did Bill. You didn't pronounce all the rest of it, but your brain interprets the full phrase. Said that he was looking for a cat.
It just fills in the blank.
The text argues that phrase is deleted in the sound we hear, in the phonological component, but it is absolutely still there in the syntax. It's a physical reality in the brain, just with the volume turned all the way down.
So copy theory is basically saying the structure is always complete, we just decide what to mute.
Precisely, and that choice is not random. The text lays out these really strict conditions on these chains. You can't just move things anywhere you want.
Right, you can't say book the read on.
Exactly, and one of the biggest rules is C command.
C command. Okay, I've read the definition constituent command, and honestly, it sounds a little like military jargon. Can you help me visualize it?
Yeah, the best way to think about it is like a corporate org chart.
Okay, I'm with you.
So at the top, you've got the CEO. Below them, some VPs, below them, managers. C command is all about authority. You can only command or relate to people who are below you in your own branch of the tree.
So a VP can command their own managers, but not the VP in the next office over.
Exactly. And they definitely can't command the CEO above them. So in syntax, movement is always raising. It's always up the ladder. You can't move down. The moved item has to land in a spot where it C commands its trace. It has to look down on where it came from.
So gravity works in reverse. Things fall up.
That's a great way to think about it. And there's another condition, uniformity.
Meaning?
If you start as a VP, you have to land as a VP. So if you move a whole chunk, a maximal phrase like the big red dog, the trace you leave behind has to be the same kind of chunk. You can't start as a whole phrase and land as just a word.
It has to be uniform. Makes sense. But this brings us to a kind of a turf war that the source describes. When an item moves and it lands in a new spot, who's in charge now?
This is the problem of target projection.
Right. So let's say the man moves up and lands in a spot called IP, which is basically the slot for the whole sentence. The man merges with IP. Who gets to label that new combination? Does the man take over, or does IP keep its label?
The source is very clear on this. The target must project. The parking spot determines the label, not the car that parks in it.
Why? I mean, if the man is the thing doing the moving, why doesn't it get to name the new structure?
Imagine if it did. So the man is a noun phrase. If it moves to the sentence position and it projects its label, the entire sentence would suddenly be labeled as a noun phrase.
So instead of a sentence that can be true or false, I just have a giant noun.
You'd have a grammatical monster.
Yeah.
An illegitimate object, as the text calls it. The whole derivation would just crash because the next piece that wants to connect to it is looking for a sentence, and all it finds is this giant noun. The gears just grind to a halt.
So the target has to stay the boss just to keep the sentence acting like a sentence.
Exactly. It's a safety mechanism. It ensures what the text calls convergence.
Okay, so we have all these rigid rules. You have to move up, leave a copy, respect the boss. It sounds kind of exhausting.
It is computationally expensive, yes.
So here's my question. If this system is so optimal and lazy, like we said at the start, why are we doing all this moving in the first place? Why not just generate the words in the right spot to begin with?
And now we're getting to the absolute heart of the theory. This is the principle of last resort.
Last resort. Sounds dramatic.
It means the system is a miser. It will never spend energy unless it absolutely has to. There are no, decorative moves in grammar. If something moves, it's because the only alternative was for the whole sentence to crash.
But what forces it to move? The text talks about greed versus enlightened self-interest.
A useful metaphor, right?
Yeah.
The old view was greed. The idea was that an item, say a noun, only moves to satisfy its own needs. Like, I'm a noun, I need to get my case checked, so I'm moving up to the subject position. I don't care about anyone else.
Selfish nouns. I'm moving to the penthouse.
Pretty much. But the source says this is wrong, or at least it's incomplete. Look at the sentence. There seem to be some books on the table.
There seem to be some books.
Okay. The subject is some books, right? But it's stuck at the end. It didn't move to the front. The word there is up front.
But the verb is seem, plural. Their seem, not their seems.
Exactly. The verb seem is agreeing with books, even though books is miles away. If books was purely greedy, it would have moved all the way up. But it didn't. Yet that relationship still exists.
So it's more of a team effort.
It's enlightened self-interest. Movement happens to check off features, like plural agreement, that would otherwise cause the whole thing to fail. It's like a lock and a key. The verb has a lock that says, I need a plural subject. The noun has the key that says, I am plural. They have to interact to check that feature off the list.
And the sentence isn't finished. It hasn't converged until all those boxes are checked.
Precisely. And the source compares it to a game of chess.
I saw that part. Global versus local moves.
Right. In chess, you might have a plan to checkmate the king in 10 moves. But you can't break the rules now just to win later. You can't just move a knight like a bishop because it would set you up perfectly.
So the system can't say, I'm going to make an illegal move here because I know it will fix a problem way down the line.
Never. Every single step must satisfy the rules of move last resort, C command locally in that exact moment. The system has no foresight. It only knows what is happening right now.
It's fascinating. It's an algorithm with zero peripheral vision, but it builds these perfect structures. But this is where the text really threw me for a loop. We've been talking about moving words, the man, cooks. But then comes the pivot. The source says, We aren't moving words at all.
This is the big reveal, the red pill moment, you know. We assume the engine works on words, on lexical items, but the source argues that the computational system actually doesn't care about the words, it only cares about features.
Move F.
Move F, not move alpha, move F.
So if I say, which book, the system doesn't see the word book. It sees what? A bundle of tags.
It sees a would feature for a question, a singular feature, a noun feature, and the economy principle, remember our lazy system says, carry as little baggage as possible.
Okay, so if I'm packing for a trip, move F means I just bring my toothbrush and credit card? I don't bring the whole suitcase.
That's the perfect analogy. The whole word, the sound of it, the pronunciation, that's the suitcase. It's heavy. The system hates moving the suitcase. It just wants to beam the credit card, the feature, to the target.
Okay, but wait. If that's true, then why do I still say which book at the start of the sentence? If the system is so efficient and it only wants to move the "wa" feature, why doesn't that feature just zip to the front and leave the word book at the end?
And you've just put your finger on the central conflict of our biological design. The answer is something called Pied piping.
Pied piping.
Like
The fairy tale.
the feature is the piper. It has to move. It's got to get to the front to check a box. But here's the problem. You have a mouth.
I do.
And your mouth, what the text calls the sensoromotor apparatus, it can't pronounce a floating "wa" feature. You can't just make a question sound all by itself, separate from a word.
So the feature has to drag the word along with it.
It's a free rider. The source calls this a derivative chain. The feature moves because syntax demands it. The category, the word book, it moves along just so we can have PF-convergence, phonological form convergence.
Because if it didn't, the sentence would be unpronounceable.
Exactly. Our physical need to speak is basically an imperfection that forces the system to do all this heavy lifting it really doesn't want to do. If we were telepathic, we might just beam features around. But because we have to vibrate air with our throats, we have to drag these heavy words across the sentence.
Wow. That completely changes how I see language. We're just imperfect vessels for a perfect code.
We are, and this leads to something even cooler. Since moving the whole word is so expensive, so heavy, the system tries to avoid it whenever it can.
It tries to get away with just moving the feature.
Yes. This is the principle of procrastinate.
Finally, a linguistic principle I can get behind.
Laughs. It's exactly what it sounds like. The system delays moving the heavy word until after the point where pronunciation is decided. It moves the features covertly.
Covert movement. Invisible movement.
Right. If you move it covertly, you don't have to drag the word along because the sound system has already done its job. Covert movement is pure move F.
Okay, I need an example. Show me this invisible teleportation in action.
Let's go back to that "there arrived 3 men" example.
Okay, there arrived 3 men.
Physically, 3 men is at the bottom of the sentence. It stayed in situ. But the verb arrived, or if we say there are 3 men, the verb is plural.
Right, it agrees.
So how did the verb know to be plural if the noun is all the way down there?
The feature moved.
The plural feature of 3 men shot up the structure covertly to check the agreement feature on the verb. But because it happened invisibly, the heavy word 3 men didn't have to move.
So the system cheated. It sent the credit card but left the suitcase at home.
It's not cheating, it's optimization. And the source compares different languages to prove this. This is where the Italian versus French comparison comes in, and it's so important.
This was the necliticization part.
Right. So in Italian, you can have a sentence that roughly translates to arrived 3 men without identifying themselves.
Arrived 3 men without identifying themselves.
Okay. Now look at that word themselves. It's a reflexive. In grammar, a reflexive needs a boss, an antecedent, to bind it. And usually that boss needs to be higher up in the structure.
But 3 men is at the bottom after the verb.
Exactly. Physically, 3 men is too low to command themselves, and yet in Italian, that sentence is perfectly fine. Why?
Because the feature's raised.
Bingo. The features of 3 men shot up to the top of the sentence covertly, and from that high vantage point, those features can see and bind themselves. The word stayed low, but the ghost of the subject is high enough to control the logic of the sentence.
That is wild. So the invisible part of the sentence is doing the real work.
And here's the kicker. French and English generally can't do this in these kinds of sentences. If you say in French something like, "Il est entré," they're entered, that expletive il blocks the relationship. The features can't get high enough to do the binding.
So Italian allows this pure feature raising in a way that proves the features are real things. independent of the words.
Exactly. If features weren't real, the Italian sentence should be impossible.
It's like seeing footprints on the ceiling. You
Yeah,
know something walked up there, even if you can't see the person who did it.
that's a perfect image.
But there was one case where this crashed, right? The text mentions a paradox. There seemed to each other to have been many linguists.
Oh, that sentence. There seem to each other to have been many linguists. It's terrible.
It sounds like word salad. But logically, if the features of many linguists raise up to the verb seem, shouldn't they be able to bind each other? Why does it fail?
That is the paradox. And the text suggests that while the features do raise, they might not raise to the exact spot needed to bind each other. Maybe they raise to the verb or the tense position, but each other is looking for a proper subject position.
So it's a game of inches. You raise to the attic, but you need it to be on the roof.
Exactly. It shows that MoveF isn't just magic. It still follows these really strict geometric coordinates. If you miss the landing zone by just a little bit, the sentence crashes.
We have covered a huge amount of ground here. We started with the man saw it, and we've ended up separating the soul of a word from its body.
Oh, that's one way to put it.
But seriously, what's the big takeaway? We've got copy theory, target projection, pied piping, covert movement. If I'm a listener just trying to make sense of my own language, what do I do with all this?
I think the takeaway is about the nature of reality. We tend to think that what we hear, the sound waves, is the reality of language. But this text argues that the sound is just the tip of the iceberg. The real reality is this silent computational dance of features happening in your brain.
The sound is just the interface, the messy biological interface.
Right. The syntax, the system inside, it's perfect. It's optimal. It wants to be purely telepathic, just moving features around with zero energy. But then it hits the sensoromotor apparatus. It hits the real world. And that friction between the perfect system and our imperfect bodies is what creates all the complexity of grammar.
It's almost philosophical. We're all just walking around with a perfect machine inside an imperfect animal.
And every time you speak, you're negotiating that truce. You're dragging words around because you have to, but your brain is secretly teleporting features behind the scenes.
So the next time you're in a coffee shop and you hear someone say, there's a latte on the table, you can just remember that latte didn't just sit there. Its features shot up to the verb, checked a box, and the word stayed behind just because the system was being lazy.
Efficient, not lazy, efficient.
Efficient, right. I'll try to remember that. Listen for the silence, everyone. That's where the real action is. Thanks for diving deep with us.
See you next time.